Boom! What is going on, ladies and gentlemen? Happy Saturday to you all, and welcome to another live beer review. Hold on. That fucking sneeze had to happen out of nowhere. But today we're going to be taking a look at another beer from, I guess you can say these guys are up there as some of the kings of the fruited sour game. Of course, I've had countless of beers from these guys, and I've always really enjoyed their stuff, of course, when it comes to the heavily like pastry, fruited sours, and all that kind of stuff like that. Drekker Brewing Company has probably kind of created a name for themselves of having the most creative combinations of flavors when it comes to their fruited sours, when it comes to either their Slang Jour line, which is their a la mode, kind of more of a pastry kind of line. And then, of course, they have the Chonk line, which is more of like a sundae kind of thing, and then they have their Brains line, which is just straight fruited sour. Well, today we got one here from their Slang Jour line, which is more of their pastry kind of sour line, which is their Apricot Shortbread Cookie Slang Jour, which the label almost looks exactly like the one from the carrot cake one. If I compared the two, they look almost identical with the same colors. I mean, apricots do have that same kind of orangish kind of color to them. Of course, when they do the Slang Jour or whatever kind of beer when it comes to a specific fruit, they like to kind of theme the label behind the colors of the fruit and all that kind of stuff. So you got some oranges in there, you got some tans for the cookie, and then so I'm thinking this thing's gonna be absolutely delicious. I am super stoked. The last one I had, the last few ones I've had from Drekker, I've kind of had a weird situation where they're kind of foaming over on me. Hopefully I don't have this situation with this one, but I'm trying to remember the last one that I had when it came to the Slang Jour might have been the carrot cake one, which if you guys remember watching that review, I wasn't the biggest fan of it. It was something that I thought shouldn't be created as a beer, just because it's just, to me, it's just not something that should have been done. I mean, the flavors were there. It just felt wrong drinking it. I'm going to tell you that straight up. But hopefully, an apricot shortbread cookie kind of sounds more of my style when it comes to a pastry sour. So I'm pretty damn excited to give this one a try. It comes in at a 7.5 ABV, which you guys know by now is right on the threshold of being something that I would consider sessionable. So this is like the peak of sessionability for me. So I'm pretty excited to give this one a try. Of course, there's a couple things that I always like to do when it comes to drinking a fruited sour, and a couple recommendations I love giving off to people when it comes to drinking this kind of style of beer, because I think it's very important and it's going to kind of give you an overall really good drinking experience throughout the whole entire experience. So, of course, if you're going to pick it up at a liquor store, bottle shop, brewery, you name it, it's most likely going to be refrigerated. There's a lot of puree and different stuff in these kinds of style of beers to where you want to make sure they're refrigerated at all times. So the moment you get it, after it's been refrigerated for when you purchase it, bring it back home. Make sure you put it right in the fridge, because you want to make sure the stuff tastes pretty cold. And because you don't want any kind of fermentation to still happen inside of the can, because with all the puree in there, if it's left at room temperature, it'll kind of start fermenting a little bit more and cause CO2 buildup inside the can. And that's why when you open it, sometimes you see foam overs when it comes to fruited sours. It just happens. But I've had this thing in the fridge for a little bit now, so I'm keeping my fingers crossed that this one doesn't foam over on me, but I took precautions. Because since I've had a little bit of a bad luck with Drekker beers with the past couple of reviews I've done for them, put a towel down, so if any foam over happens, it's not going to be all over my carpet and all that kind of stuff. So of course, after you have it refrigerated at home, and if you're going to drink it, first thing I like to do when I take it out of the fridge is just give it a couple gentle rolls in the countertop, just to kind of get everything moving around in there, because with all the puree in there, and if it settles, everything is going to be sitting at the bottom. So you want to roll it, kind of get everything back suspended in there and all that kind of stuff. And what I like to do specifically is when I'm bringing it to where I'm going to drink the beer, I always like to store it upside down. So all the stuff that was sitting at the bottom up here is now starting to flow through the entire can. So when you open this thing up, you're going to hopefully have a very even pour and not have any to where in the beginning when you pour it, it's going to be a little bit thinner. But then once you kind of get towards the end, that's where it's going to be thicker and all that kind of stuff. You want the bubble stash you've been drinking, foam overs every single time. Yeah, sometimes it's just how the brewery does it. Depends on the batch. I don't know. I've had a couple to where it's like you've stored it in the fridge, you haven't really had it in there long, and it still foams over, so you really don't know what you did wrong. It just sometimes happens when it comes to these kind of style of beers. But I am super excited to give this one a try. So let's crack this thing open and see what this thing's like on the nose. So, of course, I'm going to open this over a towel. Okay, I think we're good. Yep, no foam over, so that's a good thing. So let's see what we got on the nose with this guy. Because when I think of apricot does have like its own like a little bit of like tartness to it, which I'm curious how that's kind of intermingle with the shortbread cookie kind of aspect to it. Since it's like a lot of orange in color, I'm expecting this to be like a bright, almost orange juice in color as well. But yeah, on the nose, I'm really not getting any of the shortbread cookie kind of aspect to it. It's definitely just more of that tart apricot coming through. So that's very interesting. I'm surprised I'm not getting any of the cookie parts of it. So let's pour this thing. Going to be drinking this out of my deciduous Beer Co. glass this afternoon. Let's pour this thing. Oh yeah, definitely a thick one for sure. I like always pouring probably around half. Give it a couple swirls. And then start pouring the rest of it in because this is definitely a thick one. But yeah, look at that. She is a thick boy. Thick with 3 C's. Has a really nice color to it. Almost that orange juicy kind of color. Of course, you see from their little Slang de Jour kind of thing on there, you see like those different kinds of bubbles. There's definitely a film in here, which I'm expecting is because of the almonds. So when you look at this one, Drekker does some things where they kind of give you, like, let you know what they added to it when it comes to the grain bill or the hops and all that kind of stuff. So what they did with the malts in there, it's a pretty simple malt recipe, especially for the grain bill. It's just 2-row and then pale 2-row. It looks like all it is, and then oats. You can add flaked oat or anything like that to kind of help with mouthfeel and all that kind of stuff. For the hops they actually use Hallertau Blanc, which is a really, really nice kind of mild hops. That's a hops that's really used in like maybe in a Kolsch or something like that, because a lot of the times with this kind of style of beer, your base is going to be a Kolsch style. And then what they did, they lactobacillus it, which is a kind of a culture that naturally sours a beer. It's not a yeast culture, it's just a lactobacillus culture that naturally sours a beer. So you usually would leave it in the boil kettle for 24 hours as the lactobacillus is kind of doing its thing, and then after the lactobacillus has done its stuff, then you do like a 10-minute boil to kind of just get it up to temperature again and all that kind of stuff. And then, of course, they got their house ale yeast, which when it comes to making this kind of style of beer, an ale yeast is definitely something that I would recommend. Of course, a house ale yeast, they probably have their own yeast culture for this recipe, so of course that's just understandable. But then with the gimmicks, what they like to show when it comes to any of the fruited sour stuff they do, or any just kind of special recipe kind of thing, they like to put gimmicks. So the gimmicks here is apricot, almonds, shortbread cookies, granola, coconut, and vanilla beans. So a lot of times when you're adding a natural nut to your beer itself, like peanuts and all that kind of stuff, have natural oils that are in them. Of course, almonds is the same thing. There's definitely natural oils that are coming out of the almonds. So, of course, there's going to be some sort of film. You notice it a lot on stouts. You notice it a lot of whenever there's a beer that adds like natural, like a nut to it. There's going to be some kind of oil that's going to be added in there just because it's just the natural oils that come from the peanuts or whatever kind of nut they use. That's going to be a normal thing. So don't be surprised if you ever see kind of like an oily film on the top of your beer when it comes to there being a nut in there. That's just going to be normal. But I'm really curious, of course, that when it comes to the Slang de Jour, granola is definitely something they usually add. But I'm really curious how this shortbread cookie kind of aspect, if it could add like a bready maltiness to it. So I'm not sure. I'm expecting the apricot to still bring off some nice tart notes in there. Now that I poured it, I'm getting a little bit more of that bakery note, but it's still not predominant. It's definitely still very, very forward on like a tart apricot kind of feel in there. So without further ado, let's give this guy a try and see what it's all about. So cheers, everybody. Happy Saturday. Okay. Yeah, that is nice. That is very nice. So it's shortbread cookies to me aren't very like hit you in the face kind of style of a cookie when it comes to flavor. They're softer cookies, but shortbread kind of thing is very light on the flavor, and that's exactly what I'm getting when it comes to the shortbread cookie aspect of this one. Right up front, you get slapped in the face with like that tart apricot, which is very, very nice. I love apricot, so the apricot flavor in this is spot on. But then it kind of mellows out to this like lighter kind of cookie kind of aspect, and then you kind of you're not really getting the flavors of the granola or the coconut in there that much. I'm not, at least. But you definitely get some kind of like pastry, bakery kind of note coming through at the very, like towards the middle and the end. But I think it's not too overpowering. The shortbread aspect of it is not too much, because I feel like you would have needed to add a little bit too much shortbread cookies to make it a predominant flavor when you still just wanted to have that back end kind of bakery note in it. But so I think it's perfectly well balanced. I think if they would have done any more on the shortbread, it would have kind of taken away from that tart apricot you get up front. So I think the recipe they did on this one is pretty damn delicious, and it's pretty spot on. Even though like the shortbread cookie part of it isn't like just crazy shortbread cookie, I think it's in there just enough to know that there's some kind of like bakery pastry kind of aspect to it. Plus it blends really well with that kind of like tart apricot you get up front. Yeah, smooth, very, very thick and creamy mouthfeel, which is very nice. Almost silky. It doesn't have that, like, when it comes to the carrot cake one I had, there was almost like an oiliness on your mouth, like an oily film. Like, it just reminded me of like a cream cheese kind of situation, where you don't get in this one. Of course, that tart apricot is probably the best part of this one, I think, because if you like apricot, I think you're going to be a pretty big fan of this one. Of course, it's not too sour. Of course, if having it be a lactobacillus kind of way to sour your beer, it's like that's how you would mostly do when it comes to a kettle sour. So they take like a kettle sour kind of base, and then they just add a bunch of shit to it when it's in the bright tank. Most likely, I don't see any of the stuff being added in there in the fermenter, just because all the stuff that they're adding has sugars in it, and you don't want the yeast to kind of get overpowered with sugar, because if you add too much kind of sugars into a beer, the yeast can kind of get overwhelmed and kind of die off. Because it also helps with temperature as well. So if you want the yeast to start working, the beer has to be at a specific temperature as well. Otherwise, the yeast is just going to die, and then you're going to get the smell of like dead electronics. Because if anybody didn't know, if you're making a beer and if the yeast dies, your beer is going to give off the aroma of burnt electronics. I have no idea how it happens, but that's what happens when the yeast kind of doesn't do what it needs to do. And I think it's a really interesting thing, but I've never experienced having a beer that smelled like burnt electronics because of the yeast dying, so that's good. But overall, I think Drekker did a really, really nice job with this one. It's really well balanced, and overall a really nice, delicious fruited sour. That's for damn sure. So let's look over here at Untappd. Of course, if you can't get your hands on this apricot shortbread cookie Slang de Jour from Drekker, even though it is available on tap at the brewery right now, so if you go on Drekker's website, they let you know what all they have on tap. They have some of the brains there. They have a couple chunks. Of course, they're getting into the pumpkin spice latte, so they have a pumpkin spice latte kind of chunk. And then they have a couple different collaborations. They actually collabed with a brewery near me called Microphone Brewing Company, which they dropped their Hi-Fi Nightmare, which is a fruited sour. And then let's see, they teamed up with another brewery at King's Brewing Company to create their Froze chunk. And then yep, right here it shows the apricot shortbread cookie on tap right now. Plus, they have a bunch of fruited Berliner Weisses, fruited sours. Of course, they have IPAs, Marzans, of course, for this being an Oktoberfest kind of season. Let's see, they have some wheat beers, blonde ale, some porters. They don't really have like the imperial stouts yet, but they have some porters kind of getting ready for the darker beer and the heavier beer season. And of course, they have a bunch of IPAs, which their IPAs are really fantastic as well. So overall, Drekker has a really, really good selection when it comes to what's available on tap, along with stuff that you can get at the brewery to go when it comes to multiple different variations of the brains. You got a couple variations of the chunks. I don't see any. Okay, they have one Slang de Jour available right now, which is which is their strawberry rhubarb cobbler. But most likely, stuff that they have available on tap at the brewery right now is most likely stuff that you can get your hands on when it comes to looking at it for in a liquor store or bottle shop kind of situation. So I believe this one is available for purchase throughout the country, because I know Drekker's distribution has gotten pretty damn good. So they're pretty widely available out there. But let's look here. If you can't get your hands on this stuff, let's look and see what Untappd shows for similar beers to possibly get your hands on that may give you a similar experience to this Slang de Jour. So we got a couple of ones that I actually recognize already. So we got one here from Humble Forager Brewery, which is their Coastal Sunshine V5, which is a pineapple, orange, banana, and of course, let's see, white wheat. But this one having a lot of kind of like fruit flavors, not really any kind of like pastry sour aspect to it. So I don't know if I picked this one, even though the Coastal Sunshine beers are pretty damn good from Humble Forager. I've definitely enjoyed a lot of beers from them. Let's see, we got one here from Eagle Park Brewing Company called the Bahama Mama. which is, let's see, pineapple, toasted coconut, and sweet cherry, so it's a collaboration today with Southern Grist. This one, maybe, just because that toasted coconut aspect might bring in a little bit more of that bake good kind of aspect to it. So this one may be a maybe. I think that if it's enough when it comes to toasted coconut, it might get pretty close. There's 2 ones here from Drekker that I'm not going to recommend just because if you most likely can't get your hands on this one, you most likely won't be able to find the other ones as well. And the last one we're going to look at here is one from Burley Oak Brewing Company, which I've reviewed some of their other fruited sours. They're more of their kettle sours. They have the creams, I believe, and then they have the dreams, which is more of their heavily fruited sours. When it comes to the other version, they have just the lactobacillus, more of a kettle sour kind of style. So let's see here. What's this one all about? So this one is a raspberry watermelon bubblegum dream, which right off the bat I probably wouldn't recommend this one just because none of those flavors are going to match up with this one. But out of the ones through this similar beers list, really, dog, you're going to have to... You do this whenever you sit in here when I'm doing a review. You want to go? Or are you just going to turn around? What are you going to do? Don't mind the dog in the background. She's just trying to figure her shit out. I don't know what she's doing. But back to this Bahama Mama. I think this is the one I'm going to pick to be the most similar. Of course, you're going to have the tartness in there from the pineapple and the cherry. But that toasted coconut, if there is enough of it in there, this might give pretty close flavors to when it comes to like that almost bakery kind of aspect. Because I know when you toast a coconut, it definitely brings in a little bit more of those pastry kind of flavors and all that kind of stuff. So out of the ones that I've seen right here, I think this Bahama Mama is going to be the closest out of all the ones listed. I know there's a lot of other breweries out there that kind of bring in more desserty kind of styles when it comes to their fruited sours. I know I'm trying to remember if 450 North done it. I know a lot of their stuff is more fruit and candy based. Let's see, maybe 903. I don't know, more than 903 stuff I have is a lot of... I mean, they've collabed with Drekker to do like a cobbler kind of style, so maybe they're starting to experiment with more of a cobbler kind of style, so maybe you can find something from 903 that has like apricot bakery kind of flavors in it. But when it comes to adding apricot in a sour, Drekker is probably the one that I've seen use it the most when it comes to either doing it in their Brain series or anything when it comes to the Slang, Jour, or the Chunk. I think Drekker is going to be the best opportunity you can get your hands on to find an apricot fruited sour, I think. I don't know, I haven't seen any other ones, so hopefully if I find maybe another one in the future, I can kind of correct myself on this. But I think this one from Drekker is going to be pretty easily available if you have a place near you that carries Drekker, just because if it's on tap right now at the brewery, it's most likely being distributed as well. So, with all that being said, let's look back over here at Untapped and let's see what they show for a description of this guy, and then we'll go in with the ratings and all that kind of stuff with this. So right here it says apricot shortbread cookie Slang de Jour is stuffed with apricot, almond, shortbread cookies, granola, coconut, and vanilla beans, and it is super tasty, just like the dessert Tom's Meemaw used to make. Yeah, I agree. Of course, even though I don't really get the granola, coconut, and the vanilla bean aspect, I think maybe the vanilla beans are also in there just to add sweetness. You never really get like an actual note of vanilla. It might be kind of intermingling with those kind of shortbread cookie kind of notes, but you definitely get that kind of apricot note in there. And just by looking at the film on top, that almond is definitely playing in there as well. So let's see here. Like I stated before, it's a 7.5% ABV, which of course is right on my realm of being something that is just 7.5 is where I cut off when it comes to something being sessionable. So this is going to be right on the threshold of sessionability for me. And with over 1,264 ratings, this one has an average rating of 4.12 out of 5, which is pretty damn good. And I don't know if I have anybody on my friends list who check this one in. It doesn't look like I do. But let's look at the global ratings and see what other people had to say. So this guy purchased it at Drekker Brewing Company. He's actually drinking it most likely right now because he checked it in 3 minutes ago. So he's still probably drinking this beer as we speak. And he gave it a 4.75 out of 5. Let's see. Okay, so we're getting a lot of today check-ins. So let's see. People are getting in flights and all that stuff. So these are going to be a lot of very, very recent check-ins, which is really good. So this guy gave it a 4 out of 5. Let's see. This is an hour ago. Just checked it in. Didn't give it a rating. Let's see. We got a 4.5 out of 5 here. Purchased at Drekker. Let's see. We got a 4. Let's see, we got a 3.75 purchase at Drekker. We got a 4 out of 5 purchase from Jour, which is how I got mine. Let's see. Oh, we got another 4.25, another 4.25, so 3 4.25s in a row. 4.5. We got a 4.75 purchased at Argonaut Wine and Liquor, which is a place in Denver, Colorado. So you're seeing some Denver, Colorado availability. I know Drekker has a pretty good distribution here in the northwest suburbs of Illinois. I know a couple places that carry their stuff within like a 5-10 minute radius from me. So let's see. We got another 4.25, 3.75. We got another Jour trekking in, another Drekker. This person gave it a 2.25, which didn't really give it a description why. Well, let's do 3 more. We got a 4.5, we got a 4, and the last one we're going to look at here is a 3.25. Just did a smiley face, purchased at Drekker Brewing Company. So overall, ratings are pretty damn good on this one. Some lower ratings that I didn't understand, even though they didn't really give a reason why. But that's okay, they weren't expected to. But with all that being said, let's start trying to figure out what we're going to be doing for ratings on this guy over here. See if I can fill the rest of it in there. Yep. So we got the can empty. Let's get another sip going. And the first thing we like to look at is can art, which, of course, you guys know by now how I explained in the beginning of the review that Drekker kind of sticks when it comes to the colorways. They like to go with kind of the theme of what kind of fruits and what kind of ingredients are in the specific beer to kind of go with the colors. So this one to me is almost exactly the same from the carrot cake, the one they did. I did like a side-by-side comparison looking at the pictures, and it's almost identical. So I don't really think they did too much on this one when it comes to kind of making an original situation, when it's kind of upsetting. But just because it's the same exact colors as the carrot cake one, I don't know if I'd give it like the craziest rating, even though I really enjoy the colors and all that stuff and the design on there. So I'd probably give it, just because it's almost the exact same one from the carrot cake one, I'll give it a 3.5 out of 5. I wish they kind of just changed it up and made a little bit more of a lighter colors to it. Maybe you had to, I don't know. To me, it just looks almost exactly the same as the carrot cake one. But let's see here. If I got this beer in a flight at Drekker Brewing Company, so if I decide to make the however hour haul up to North Dakota to drink this beer because it's on tap right now, if I got it on tap, would I get another one? Absolutely. If I got this in a flight, this would definitely be one that I'd get another glass of and most likely see if I can get a 4-pack to bring it home. The flavors are nice. It's well balanced. It's not too high in the bakery flavors. It's not too tart when it comes to the lactobacillus and the apricot in there. So I think this one is one of the more well balanced beers that I've had from Drekker. It's not really overpowering in any aspect at all, which I think is really, really nice. So with that being said, I think my final rating on this guy, I'm going to give it a solid 8.5. 8.5 I think is where I'm going to leave it. Pretty damn delicious. So if you can get your hands on this one from Drekker Brewing Company, I would definitely recommend it. This is another one that Drekker's kind of knocked out of the park and having just overall really fantastic flavors. So big shout out to Drekker Brewing Company. They're always doing some great stuff over there. But other than that, yeah, I think that's pretty much what I have for you guys today. So thank you everybody in chat for hanging out. You guys are awesome. If you haven't yet, please hit that like button. It would help me out a lot. And also, if you're new to the channel and like what you see, make sure to hit that subscribe button as well, along with that notification bell. I'm trying to reach my way up to 500 subs. It's kind of been back and forth these past few months. So if I can get 500 subs by the end of the year, I'll be ecstatic. Just because I've been teetering on the same amount of subs for like a couple months now. So hopefully we can get new people in here and starting to get a different crowd coming into the chat. And of course, if you want to shoot me a follow on all my different social media platforms, you got my Instagram when it comes to where you could see me doing stuff over, or where I'm going to be reviewing. Of course, you'll see what I'm be reviewing that day with the hand checks and all that kind of stuff. And plus, I need to try to be a little bit more responsible and take more action to kind of show you guys a little bit more behind the scenes stuff that is going over at Fibs when it comes to possibly me kegging, all that kind of stuff. Just do a little bit of story posts, kind of give people a behind the scenes look. I know I've been kind of lacking on it. I get focused and working, and I always forget to kind of do a little story on Instagram, so that's my fault with that. But you can always shoot me a follow on there. Of course, you can always shoot me a friend request on Untapped. You can see people like me, my father, Ian's on there, Face Meat's on there, Duchess, Logan, Ian, Dutch, Wintucky's on there. A bunch of people that are within this small little beer community that we've created over here are on Untapped, just checking in beers and having a good time. I like to call Untapped Facebook for beer drinkers just because it's practically what it is. You check in beers, you get badges. It's a really fun time. So, if you haven't shot me a friend request on there, link to that is down in the description below as well. But of course, if you want to figure out the best way to support me, I'm always going to recommend the Patreon. That's going to be how I can get more stuff in my hands, plus get more stuff out to you guys as well. So if you want to join the Patreon, link to the page is down in the description below as well. Of course, I do monthly craft beer giveaways over there, so I just did the drawing for the winner yesterday, so I have a couple packages to send out when it comes to people getting their beer. So whoever's the recipients of those, keep an eye out for that. But of course, if you join the Patreon, you'll have the opportunity to win monthly 4-packs of Illinois exclusive craft beer that I pick out personally. So you can possibly get the chance to win. Of course, I remember the higher tier you join, the better chances you're going to have to win. And if you frickin' spend $5 and win, you're just got yourself something worth the money. So any little bit helps when it comes to helping me get more beer in my hands, helping me get more content out to you guys, because I love doing this and it's just a really fun time. But other than that, that is what I have for you guys today for. So thank you everybody again in chat for hanging out. Thank you everybody who's going to be watching the replay as well. And I'm going to end this like I always do before we get the hell out of here. If you're going to drink responsibly. Don't drink and drive. And I'll see you all next time. Cheers.